A lot more people stutter in the firm world than people think.
Naming a child as part of the Stuttering Challenge.
Yep.
Wow.
Baruch Hashem, now we're over 1,000 success stories later.
What is the underlying issue that causes the stutter?
Stuttering is basically they're not in control of their speech.
What's the differences between people that have it mentally and people that have it physically?
Once you're stuttering, now you have 4 challenges.
Is there anything in history written about stuttering?
The Rashi doesn't say that that's where it came from. The Medrash says you have to help them in a way that's going to help them for real life.
So if someone is not a medaber, which he's being blocked
You
out,
could have tkufis, which most people have. It fluctuates.
welcome back to Latest Talks Plus. This episode will be in English. It's probably our second or third English episode. So those who understand English will appreciate this episode. We're always trying to get unique topics, unique people, something that could change people's lives for the better. We're knowledge plus entertainment. So today we have the honor to have a special guest in the studio for people who subscribe to the Latest Talks to have a bonus episode for them. We have Yanky Kaufman. Yanky Kaufman is a stuttering professional. Welcome, Yanky, to the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
How did you get into it? Why did you care about it?
I got into this field because I had a stutter myself from as far back as I can remember. From when I started speaking, my parents told me I would stutter. And stuttering is a very difficult challenge. It's a very complex challenge, very misunderstood challenge. And hopefully today we'll speak about all these different aspects of stuttering so people have better insight in what this is all about. For myself, I started stuttering when I started speaking. And of course, my parents took the traditional route, sending me to various speech therapists. Unfortunately, after many years, there were still no results.
What does many years mean?
3 years of going for therapy and then another 2 years of the therapist coming to our house.
Mm-hmm.
So they took a little break because they said, maybe I'm not old enough, so I'll wait. And at my bar mitzvah, that's, the big challenge for people who stutter.
Pshatel.
Saying the pshatel. So of course, people who stutter think, maybe I shouldn't speak. Why should I bother? I want to enjoy my bar mitzvah. But I felt that it would be a bigger nabach to not speak, because I felt everyone would think, why are you not speaking? Everyone speaks. Oh, it's because you stutter. Wow, I didn't know it was such a big issue for you. So I decided it would just be better to speak like everyone else. And after I spoke, or lack thereof, trying to speak as best as I could, everyone understood that it's at a very good time now to try to get more fluency. So my parents decided we're going to go to specialists. We're not just going to go to regular speech therapists. So we went to, make a long story short, really, it's over the next many, many years, I went to every specialist that I heard of. I started from in America, then we went to Eretz Yisrael, where I learned.
Cross countries.
Cross country. And all different types of people. Therapists, specialists. It's very hard to find people who used to stutter and stop stuttering. Although, Baruch Hashem, you're speaking to someone right now.
Yeah, I
like
wanted to
this.
ask you, are you still stuttering today? Doesn't sound like.
And I'm in front of the scary three-legged monsters over. We got a few of them. And the one-eyed, three-legged monsters. But Baruch Hashem, we'll speak about it later, but Hashem put a new way in my mind. And going back, it was hard for me to find someone like this. And sometimes people would tell me, this guy used to stutter more. He still has a little bit of a stutter. I would speak to him, what did you do? But all these things that they did were anecdotal, meaning it worked for them, but it was not a lamaisidik way to work for other people.
And why is that?
For example, one guy would tell me the way he would relax was he would take a hot bath 3 times a day for 20 minutes. And it's one thing if he would tell me would help, mamash gavaldik, fluent, that would be one thing. But best case scenario, it helped him a little bit. So yeshiva bacher, it's just not lamaisa. And then, I went to this guy, very nice guy, helps other people. He's not alive anymore, but he had a way that worked for him, something like speak slowly, a little bit of a sing-song. I hear it. If you speak slow, it could work. If you sing, it could work, but it's not practical. And even when it does work, it doesn't work so well that it's kedai to do that. So between the two of, how effective it could be and how much effort you have to put into it, it's just, for most people, just going to fall through the cracks.
So what should they do? They should continue stuttering?
So I kept on my search. And after I went to so much therapy, I also went to a lot of Rabbanim for advice, for brachas, eitzes.
And it helped a little?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Well, everything worked in the office.
What do you mean by that?
When it's calm, and after a few weeks or a few months of speaking with the person, of course, I spoke much better. But in the real life, which is what counts, that's what I went to therapy for, nothing worked at all because there was not any very effective practical skills.
So you're saying someone that you were comfortable to talk with, that was easy for you?
With that person.
In
that
their
office.
Specific person.
That specific person. Yeah,
I'm
saying if you're going to pay someone top dollar, hopefully they're going to be patient with you, right? They want you to keep coming back at least, right? So after, maybe not right away, but after a few months, it'll get significantly better. But that's not what counts. And unfortunately, sometimes therapists think that that's enough because, hey, they see the person who comes to them and it's very narrow, but they see that, hey, this person is speaking better. So they're a success story. I remember one of the therapists I went to considered me one of their success stories because with them, I was speaking great. And my mother was like, but he's still stuttering.
But out of the office of the therapy, you're still stuttering.
Right. So the therapist said, well, there must be, I don't know. With me, he's great. I was like, really? So she said, yeah, you could come. So I said, okay, I'm coming. Of course, in the office. This was after a year of therapy.
Wow. What is the underlying issue that causes to stutter?
So stuttering is very complex, but to say it, to have a little better understanding, is that anything that could get in the way of one's speech can cause one to stutter. So what is involved in a person's speech? Now, this is obviously very complex, but we'll say the basic ideas. Their cognition, what's going on in their brain, how their brain works, how they think. Okay. Number one. Number two is their emotions, play a big role. And number three is their speech motors.
What does that mean?
Like the physical part.
The breathing?
Breathing is maybe one of the aspects, but more the mouth movements and the connection between the brain and the mouth, or the mouth movements.
The
speech
muscles.
Motors, the muscles, the signals. Again, I'm keeping it very simple because when you get into the whole scientific aspect, you get into how the brain works and how it, neurologically, how the brain and mouth work together. But this is keeping it very simple. What's involved in speech? You basically got your brain, your mouth, and your emotions. Now, any aspect of these areas that is a little bit off can cause one to stutter. It only takes a little bit of something off track or imbalance or weak or more powerful to get the system off that one will start to stutter. So, could a person start stuttering from a trauma? There's something called psychogenic stuttering, where a person will start to stutter because of a emotional upheaval, turbulence. And it doesn't even have to be something major. Of course, I've seen many people with some major traumas, all different types, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be from a smaller trauma as well. It could be from a difficult school year. So that's called developmental trauma, where it's not a one-time event, but...
If someone has the Down syndrome?
Yeah, well, that for a one-time thing, that wouldn't necessarily be a trauma.
Okay, but
it would be more like if they had a major faher and all eyes were on them, and there was 3 gedolim there, and the whole yeshiva, and they have to get the answer, and they prepared, something like that. That could be a trauma, but it doesn't have to be a trauma on speech. It could be something else. They saw something happen to them. I mean, car crashes. I have a few of those types of stories. Accidents. Fire. Seeing police cars and fire trucks and things like that, noise.
That causes someone to stutter?
That could cause someone to stutter. There's many of these types of stories. And it could be also from developmental trauma, having a difficult school year, transitioning from a cheder to mesifta, to yeshiva gedayla. they're not at home anymore.
A shock?
That could be a shock, could be a one-time thing, or a slow but continuous.
So there's many different types of stuttering, as I understand, because it could be a muscle issue, it could be a brain issue, it could be a mental issue, it could be an emotional issue.
Right.
So stuttering can be under the same category, but it's completely different ideas. It's not connected one to the other. If it's a muscle issue, then you have to take care of the muscle and build up the muscle. If it's a mental issue, you have to take care of it mentally. So it's as I'm looking at it, as I understand it, how could a speech therapist be the answer to someone stuttering when there are many, many issues involved in this one topic? It's not even a category because...
Well, you're saying a few very interesting points.
That's my perspective on it,
You're saying
as far as I understand.
You're saying very good points. And sometimes a person will go to OT if you see in the early stages something that stands out more. However...
What does OT mean?
Occupational therapy.
Okay.
If someone is slurring, someone has weak muscle tone or things like that, some people go to a speech therapist, and some people go to a mental health professional. But this introductory aspect of stuttering is not so relevant when you're dealing with someone who already has been stuttering for a while, which is usually when people start to go for therapy. Because in the initial stages, it's hard to nip it in the bud. What is this about? What's going on? It usually doesn't come in full force, although it can. But again, just generally speaking, once a person is stuttering for a while, the stuttering brings all the aspects. It brings out all the aspects. Basically, it gets everything off track. Once you're stuttering, from wherever it starts, now the speech modes are off. And then your emotions get involved. And then your brain gets involved. Your brain is off because your talking is off. So when you're talking, being that you get all of these things involved, when it's off, everything usually gets pulled into it. So it's usually not exclusive that you can say, oh, this is the one thing that needs to be done. That's from number one. Number two is that once a person is stuttering for a while, now they have their fear of stuttering.
Right.
Now that gets everything another whole level of what their challenges.
They're scared to go in public. They're scared to daven for Dom. They're scared to say Barchi by the Torah. They're scared to go to a restaurant and ask for specific foods on the menu. They'll rather order online.
That's the reason for texting, I say.
Yeah. And texting and not leaving any voice notes or talking on the phone. So you're saying that everyone who stutters falls into the category of fear, falls into the category of avoiding things, and
not necessarily everyone, but most people. I'd say yes, definitely. And so not everyone is aware of it. But there's another aspect: is simply they're talking differently once you have a stutter. They're always afraid, and therefore it's not just what happens, because that will depend on the person how they'll let it affect them, but it's also they're
anxiety.
Talking differently. They feel that they have to jumpstart because they know it could take longer for them. So they jumpstart. They're always thinking, what's the easier way to say it?
Certain vowels that it's
vowels,
harder for them
everyone
to
has
say?
it. Yeah, sometimes vowels, but it depends. They don't know to what extent they're going to stutter. So basically, once you're stuttering, now you have 4 challenges. Stuttering itself, the switching of your words.
Okay, swapping certain words because you want to avoid certain vowels.
And number 3 is to avoid saying certain words, to pull out of the situation.
So what's the difference between the second option and the third option?
So the second is when I switch my words. For example, I may want to say my number is 3801. But if 0 is hard for me to say, I'll say, the number is 0. But if it's hard for me, I'll say slow motion 3801. So you probably didn't pick it up unless I did it, maybe because I said it slower. I said 01. See, 0 is hard for me to say. And people stutter very good at covering it up. So a lot of times we see people with a slight stutter and we say, oh, probably doesn't bother him. Maybe here and there. But we're very good at covering it up. And therefore, a lot of people come with a very slight stutter because it's not slight. It's always on their mind. They're always playing this game. What should they say? So they may be very good at covering it up. Number 3 is avoiding, and it could be the whole conversation. It could be making new friends. Like you said, going into restaurants, meeting new people, more opportunities. It really affects every aspect of their life. Number 4 is the apprehensiveness that they have, the fear that they have that maybe they will stutter. So you may have a guy who'll speak in public and he'll do great. You say, oh, no, he doesn't stutter. I didn't see anything. But the fear that they have that they may stutter because they know that they could stutter, it's not something in their mind. They don't have in their mind, maybe I'll turn, purple in the middle of the speech. Why would you turn purple? You never turn purple. But they know that they can't stutter. So maybe they didn't stutter, but they're always afraid that they know that it can happen.
Anxiety.
And they don't know how not to.
So that's called anxiety.
Aspects. The fear, yeah. This is the emotional aspects. There's also this is called psychogenic stuttering, what we spoke about before. And another aspect is the neurogenic stuttering, where it's something based on their brain. Sometimes after a stroke, where it's very obvious that their brain was affected, that something went haywire. I've seen it with people take certain types of medications. And again, sometimes people get some types of surgeries and it affects their blood and their blood flow and things like that. And they'll start stuttering. I even had a guy who started stuttering in his much later years after going on drugs. So if there's one thing you're going to get out of tonight's interview is just say no to drugs.
But what kind of? The legal ones or the illegal? I have a question. My question is like this. If someone stutters, do they know beforehand that they will stutter on certain words, or it's a gamble?
So this is part of the challenge, that it's unpredictable. And yet, it's predictable. Meaning, many times you know when you're going to stutter. Certain letters, certain words, but you don't know to the extent of your stuttering, how much you'll stutter on it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll never know. A lot of times you don't know if it's going to just be a block or a repetition. Mm-hmm. We'll speak about that, the different diagnostics of stuttering, but exactly what's going to happen and for how long. And you don't necessarily always stutter on those letters, so maybe you will stutter, maybe you won't. Number 2 is sometimes it could be random. You're not expecting it, but you can stutter. That's part of the challenge. Will I stutter or will I not stutter?
So you're saying it's both. They know for a fact on these words that they'll stutter.
They can most of the time. They'll be like most of the time.
Okay.
But they don't know to what extent. But sometimes they'll stutter at random times. Also, it depends on the person. Sometimes they're more comfortable, and usually people stutter less.
Right.
Sometimes you'll speak to someone who's a newer person, and they're uncomfortable or intimidating.
Or they're under the weather.
Exactly. It depends a lot how they feel, because a lot has to do with their emotions or what's on their mind. Now, again, we simplified things before, but a lot has to do with how much is on their mind. Is there something weighing on their mind? Are they worried about something? Right? Are they thinking about 10 things that happened from the past? Both. It's complicated. So you could have tkufas, which most people have. It fluctuates. And that's part of the confusion. Wait, do I stutter? Do I not stutter? And there could be so many aspects that's causing one to stutter that it's hard to get a good handle on it. But what you do know is that you can stutter at any point, and you don't know when and how long it's going to happen, which is part of the challenge. A lot of people feel, I would rather, I felt this way, just not be able to talk like the first half of the day, just, right? Basically like a deaf person, not be able to talk, a mute. And the second half of the day, then I'll be able to just say what I want to say, not have this confusion. But that's not the way it works. And that's part of the challenge, because let's say someone has an issue that they can't move their hand. So that's it. They can't move their hand. They know it's not easy, but they know certain things they're not going to be able to do, certain things they will still be able to do. And this is the situation. But when it comes to stuttering, it's not like that. It's unpredictable. They can schmooze, but sometimes they mamish can't. Mm-hmm. So they look very normal, very with the program. They have what to say. On the other hand, they feel so different. And that's part of the paradox that a lot of people feel like. I've had many people in my office, especially the girls, say, by the way, I'm so normal. No, I have friends. I do get good marks. I have a job. I'm wondering why they came to me. It's so normal. Everything's great. And then they say, but I'm so not normal. I can't talk. I avoid this. People have no idea how much it's on my mind. People don't chap. I hung up the phone and they thought my battery died, but really I wasn't coming out, so I just hung up the phone. They don't understand all these little aspects of how
So
it's
people
coming
that
out.
stutter are really, really in pain. It affects everything because a person is a madaber, which means that's the level of
Defining-
difference that we are from a chai, right? So there's doimam, tzamai, chai, madaber. And the reason why we're people and not animals is because we're at the level of daber, right? We're a madaber. So if someone is not a madaber, which he's being blocked of, then he feels like an animal in this world because he doesn't have the power to talk. Obviously,
It's a little sharp, but that is what some people who stuttered expressed. I ask all of my clients before they come to me, how would you describe the challenge of stuttering to someone who never stuttered? And some people have said this. I'm a medaber. So if I'm lacking that aspect, what type of adam am I? Now, of course,
right. Obviously,
it affects
they
people
have
at different levels. Not everyone is like this, but you see the extent that it can affect a person, especially in a from person's life.
right.
Because a lot of how we interact and how people understand what we're about is how we talk. L'mashal, in the secular world, you don't even have to talk as much. It's not as social. You could come home, half a day of school, watch television for 4 hours. You don't really have to talk. You could have friends on social media. You could text, send stuff.
But it's a boring life.
It's a boring life.
But they can continue their life that way.
Right. They get a job that's, maybe a boring job, a more technical job. And then compare that to a firm person who's, especially the men, davening for the Amud, Aliyas, schmoozing after Shacharis, you meet people who you know, chavrusas, on your way to daven, coffee room, chavrusas, rabbeim.
Everything.
You're around your neighbors, you know everyone, You're always talking. And that's, in the secular world, if a person is, let's say, a very cool guy, very good at basketball or whatever, you could be a little more superficial and still make it big, so to speak. Feel a part of it. But in the firm world, in general, it's not the way it works. It's people see who you are, how you communicate, how involved you are. It's not just about if you're a cool guy, if you have a lot of money, there's more teichen. So people see that, who you are, a lot depends on how you express yourself.
Wow. So what's the differences between people that have it mentally and people that have it physically?
The stuttering is the same. Stuttering is stuttering. And it's just a matter of where it can come from. But it's playing out in their speech. And like we said, there's neurogenic stuttering, psychogenic stuttering, and the most popular one, perhaps, is developmental stuttering. From a young age, they start stuttering. A lot going on when a person's talking. There's more aspects than what I mentioned, but just to keep it simple.
But you can explain the differences?
It's not really so relevant.
Okay.
Because someone is stuttering, you could have a bunch of people lined up who stutter. You can't tell, this person came from this aspect. This one came from there. That one is because of this. They all look the same. So stuttering is stuttering. Stuttering is basically they're not in control of their speech.
Right.
So something's off track, etc. And that's basically what it boils down to.
And starts from what age? You said you started right when you started talking.
Yeah. So a lot of people start at their younger years when they're developing their speech, anywhere between ages 2 to 7.
Okay.
Very common. And it could happen at any age.
2 to 7.
Yeah, it could happen at any age.
Can stuttering be a generic problem?
So good question. There definitely are some people who stutter and have children who stutter. But then there's a lot of people who don't have family members who stutter, and they stutter.
So it's the nurturing that can affect that?
So it's hard to know, because if they grow up in a house, because it's not exclusive to people who stutter that they'll have children who stutter, and not necessarily all their children will stutter, and sometimes it'll skip a generation. And
so it is generic.
Not necessarily. I mean, you just see there's a pattern, but you don't know why that's happening. Is it a gene, or is it because they stuttered for the same reason the parents or grandparents stuttered?
Could be a shortness of breath issue or that type of thing.
Well, it could be many, many different aspects. Anything, like we said, that affects their brain, mouth, or emotions could affect stuttering.
Right.
A lot has to do with perhaps how they grew up. So yeah, if the parents stuttered, not necessarily a gene, but this is what they see.
They could be nurtured into that way.
Yeah, but again, a lot of these people, they stuttered when they were a young age. But a lot of people stutter at a young age, they outgrow it, right? So it's very complicated. It's hard to get any real research on this because there's so many different aspects that you could say why a person is stuttering that it's very difficult to pinpoint and say it's because of a certain reason.
So that goes back to my question. How is stuttering a category? And how can you understand how to take care of it if there's so many underlying issues that can possibly be?
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of people who treat stuttering. Mainly speech therapists, because we look at it, has to do with their speech. That's where it's playing out, right? Mental health professionals can treat stuttering. Tonight, I'm speaking on a network of mental health professionals, of 1,500 of them, and they want to know about stuttering. And it's in the DSM, which means this is the category it's considered in the mental health issue. And the truth is, there's a lot of people who treat stuttering, not primarily, but I'll give you a few examples. So you have people who, nutritionists can tell you, oh, I know a couple of people who I helped because there's imbalance and this and that affected their brain, and therefore I can go on this type of diet. Then you have the chiropractors that will tell you, oh, it's because your spine is not aligned and everything has to do with the brain and the neurological aspect, and if you get it straight. And the problem is that a lot of these people have helped some people. And they'll say, is it possible? Yeah, it's possible to get better. Problem is that they don't necessarily follow up with enough of the clients, and they only treated very few of them. So could it be? It could be. Is it probable? Not probable. So you have a lot of different people that could treat stuttering.
Okay. So Yanky Kaufman has a solution for the problem. How do you understand, what the issue is, and how do you treat them?
Like I said, my background is that I went for a lot of therapy, so I know what people do. And after, I guess we're going back to my journey.
When did you stop stuttering?
Something must have happened. Right?
Yeah, obviously.
So I continued my journey of trying different therapy. And yeah, I tried on my own also. I realized certain times I didn't stutter as much. Why is that? I did a lot of introspection and I experimented. But at the end of the day, I got nowhere. The change happened when, I want to say one thing first. I was going to say I gave up on therapy. I gave up on therapy, but I didn't give up that I could be helped. Why should I give up? Hashem could do anything.
Right.
And I didn't always stutter. Sometimes I stutter, like we said. Sometimes we stutter, sometimes we don't. It looks like I'm doing the same thing, so there must be a way. Maybe they haven't figured it out. And maybe they have weak ideas, but there must be a way how it's possible. I always believe that it's possible. Again, most people who stutter when they speak by themselves, they don't stutter. I'm talking, I'm using my brain, I have these emotions. So there's obviously something going on when I speak to other people, so there must be a way. Again, just nobody figured it out. But I believe that it's possible. And I would daven 3 times a day, minimum, many times 10 times a day. I would go to chasana, and I would want to wish mazel tov to the chassan. And sometimes what happened, I would wish mazel tov, and you're like, when you have a stutter, so sometimes you have these secondary behaviors of blinking and looking away and getting a little lost. So especially me, when I have a heavy stutter, this type of situation, whereas people online and he's so excited, it's fast paced and you got to think fast. When it's your turn, you got to go because people are behind you and there's music. It's a balagan. And how do you say balagan in Yiddish? Balagan.
We use the word.
Use the word. Okay. So it's a balagan.
Matzav.
Matzav. There we go. And I'm coming in, and sometimes I can miss the chassan's head, it gets awkward, and sometimes nothing coming out, and he doesn't know what to do. He gives a big smile, and within 3 seconds, it gets awkward. He doesn't know if she continues smiling or and
how
and
to handle the situation.
Yeah. And then sometimes the kala turns what's going on? Why is he in one position for so long? And he's not even shaking his hand. So of course, the next chasana I would go to, I would daven to Hashem, please, I should be able to speak better. And So it could happen 10 times a day that would happen, especially if I knew, like we spoke about before, when I was more prone to stutter, but I didn't necessarily stutter all the time. So I wouldn't give a Rebbe bracha, as they say. No, just keep it short to the point. But still, even that could be a challenge. Sometimes you hope like the music is so loud, like they want, mouth, know what you're saying, like mumble something in the mouth, and they know what you're saying, You
just move your lips, and that's it.
Mouth and this. So getting back, it was, I tried a lot, but I never gave up. So one day, now I got married. I'm not going to go through the whole story, but make a long story short, my wife doesn't care at all that I stuttered. Even when I stopped stuttering.
When you got married, you were still stuttering.
Full force.
Wow.
Hashem could make, interestingly enough, that somebody doesn't care about stuttering. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it is. That's what I'm saying.
That's why it could be bashert.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying, that she was willing to take you even with the stutter. That's
And it wasn't like, well, I had a good sense of humor and I stuttered, so, okay, it's good enough. I know that wasn't the case because I knew my wife was comfortable with it. And number two, you could sense it. And number two, when I stopped stuttering, she was only excited because I was happier. She really didn't care.
Wow. How many years after the chasana did you stop stuttering? And how?
So I stopped stuttering at just a good stage in my life where I could relate to pretty much everyone else who stutters. Again, dating and joining a new family, going to the Shabbos Sudas. We moved to Eretz Yisrael, going to a whole new community, setting up, I was having children. And one of the challenges is naming your child, right?
Naming a child is part of the stuttering challenge.
Yep.
Wow. I did not think of that.
This cheshbon, so what are you going to name, right?
Wow.
This is a major cheshbon.
You're taking my brain into places that I would never think, you see people stutter, you can't even imagine how deep the stuttering affects people's lives.
Yeah. Sometimes you won't even say it. I don't want to name because the person, maybe you'll say, I don't know if this is as big of a tzedekah as you really say, but anyway, I really always wished to name my child Miriam. Since I was 2, I just loved the name Miriam. Something like that, So, Baruch Hashem, it was a name that worked out, and it wasn't hard for me to say. And just the day-to-day, even small things. Should I say the joke? Should I introduce myself to new people or just be okay in my corner? And nobody will even know. People just say, I'm not so outgoing.
Not so talkative.
And a lot of times people who stutter do want to introduce themselves, do want to be more involved. And they're very capable, but they avoid.
So if someone is extroverted, they have a much bigger issue than someone that's introverted.
So there's one later thing that happened after naming my child. I also started to give shir. I was learning in the Mir in Yerushalayim. And I gave shir on Navi.
How could you give a shir if you're stuttering?
Because I wanted to learn Navi. And that's one of the aspects that I had in my life that got me through the stuttering. That something that was important and that was right, I would do it. So all the other things that were not so important, I didn't have to do, I would shy away.
So how many people were by your shir?
It was a nice amount. I'm saying for the Mir, it was once a week. I'll tell you what happened was that I wanted to learn Navi, and really I wanted to learn it one-on-one. To learn it properly, I'll have a Rebbe teach me. And I felt, this is so important, Navi. Other people should probably learn Navi also. They probably want to. So why don't we also set up a shir? So I said, we'll just have a shir, and we'll all learn Navi together. So I asked around different Rebbeim to give the shir. Make a long story short, there was only one person that was negay at that time, on Friday afternoon, that we could get a shir room. And make a long story short, in the Mir, I finally got someone. Anyway, the day before, he tells me he can't do it. I'm like, what do you mean? Got to learn Navi. So I said, you know what? I'll give the shir. I wanted to learn Navi because I didn't know Navi well. Once we go into 5th grade, we only learn Gemara.
Right.
I wanted to learn Navi also. So I said, you know what? Just for the first year, I'm going to do it. But that's it. It's after this is going to be over. I stayed up pretty much the whole night and learned Sefer Yeshua Parak Aleph. And I gave the shir. I had a few people make sure there's some people who would be there. And after the first year, I was like, you know what? think I could do it.
Wow.
And
Committed.
that went on for the next 2.5 years, as long as I lived in Eretz Yisrael. That was the shir that was probably the most consistent shir. There was not a Friday that we missed. A lot of times we even do it, if the Zman ended on Thursday, they were still there on Friday, we would do the shir on Friday. Yom Tiv, we would do the Navi shir. We went through a lot of Sfarim, Baruch Hashem. Now, in learning, because I was more confident in it, so I didn't stutter as much. Doesn't mean that if you're confident, then you won't stutter at all. I didn't stutter as much, so it was doable. Okay, that brings us to, it was a few months after that when I stopped stuttering. So what happened? There was a person, Israeli Bacher, that spoke a little bit of English, that had a major stutter, and he went already to all the therapists over there that he heard of, and nothing worked, and he was burnt out just as much as me. But he was in a much more difficult situation, and he left yeshiva. And the situation was dwindling more and more downhill. His parents were very afraid. And someone knew his parents, someone knew me. And they said, Yanky, can you speak with the boys? Can you meet with the boy? He stutters. So I was like, okay, what do you want from me? I can teach him how to stutter. Can't teach him how to not stutter. So he said, no, maybe Yanky, you'll give him some chizuk. So chizuk? I'm very good at chizuk. I'm very good at getting chizuk. I'm not the type to give chizuk with a stutter. So we were at rock bottom over here. He was at rock bottom. No one who he was comfortable talking to, unless only someone who stuttered and, could potentially help him. So the person said one of the best things, one of the best pieces of advice, and that is, how about just be his friend? Okay, that I could do. I could be any Yid's friend. So I spoke a little bit of Hebrew, he spoke a little bit of English, and we made up to meet the next day. And I davened to Hashem, what? It was probably going to be awkward. Like, what am I going to tell him? We're just going to stare at each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I davened to Hashem, took out a little piece of paper I was going to bring it with me, keep it, this little piece of paper in my office.
Still have it?
Still have it, sure.
Wow.
9 years old. And I said, Hashem, please put something in my mind that I should be able to tell him. I just started writing. Hashem started to put ideas into my mind. I started to percolate. And I started to develop. I didn't take it too seriously because, again, I went for so much therapy. Make a long story short, we met. And we met for a little bit of chizuk. And I said, hey, why don't we experiment? I thought of this last night. Hashem put it in my mind. Why not? Now it was a fine balance because he wasn't meeting me for therapy. I didn't want him to. He was burnt out of therapy. I felt that he didn't want to be let down again. So we're not really meeting for therapy. But I figured why not? It wouldn't hurt, just to try. Anyway, went back home after the meeting, and I was surprised to hear that he wants to meet with me again. It's like, wow.
What did you do by the first meeting?
Little chizik, little experimenting,
You stuttered in both languages?
Yeah.
In Hebrew and English?
Yeah.
Oh, once you stutter, it doesn't matter
Usually,
which language.
yeah, sometimes it's harder in a second language.
Because you have to focus much more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next day we met, we went through the basic thing again, a little more friendly. And I said, let's experiment. We tried before. Why not? We'll just do it a little bit more. And went back home. And I was surprised to hear that he wants to meet with me again the next day. This was on a Thursday. So we met, and I was almost going to drop the experiment because, again, in the beginning it was just like for fun, so to speak. But if you do it a third time, it'll be like serious, and we don't want to hurt anyone to make them feel let down or something like that. So I said, you know what? In my mind, I was like, let's just do it. I went back home, and slowly I realized, hey, something's kicking in. I'm not really stuttering anymore. But again, didn't get too excited because I tried so much therapy. So not getting too excited over here. Whatever. And I didn't really have it on my mind exactly. I didn't pinpoint exactly what I was doing. But I knew there's something changing.
How long did you speak with him?
Half hour, something
Half
like
hour.
that. Yeah.
Okay. So you got home from the third time.
The third time. And then I was speaking much better. And again, with my wife, I was much more comfortable. So I didn't really stutter so much. I told my wife, I think I'm not really stuttering anymore. She's like, yeah, you hardly stutter anyway. Like, it wasn't really on her mind. I was like, no, it's different now. Because now it's not, I'm glad I'm not stuttering because with you I'm more comfortable. I know I'm not going to stutter. Whole different feeling. Well, the next day I went to the Mir, Friday, and I told Rabbi Huda Wakshel, my Rebbe, one of my Rebbeim, I went by a lot of Rebbeim in the Mir, but he was one of them, and he actually, felt bad for me. And he used to tell me, Yanky, I know you're up to things, different experiments for yourself, therapists that you go to. If you want to practice with me, do homework, whatever it is. Very nice of him. He's a very busy person, but he made his business to try to help me in whatever way he could. And we would practice once a week, different types of things. So I go over to him just to tell you the extent of my stuttering. Oh, one more thing before I tell you what happened with him. When I was online to speak with him, for the first time in my life, I turned to the guy behind me and I said, Shalom Aleichem, what's your name? And I never did that. That was
Indication.
a new vocabulary for me. I would never tell someone, Shalom Aleichem, what's your name? They would introduce themselves to me. And then I would respond, but I would never go out of my way to introduce myself to a new person. It was a new vocabulary. Shalom Aleichem, what's your name? Because I felt I could do it, so why not? Be a little bit more friendly. And I wanted to continue the conversation. And before that, I was just stick my head in the Gemara, prepare what I'm going to ask. Anyway, I finally go to Rabbi Wakshel, and I want to tell him the exciting news. Like, I feel like something's changing. We're getting better. And after 10 seconds, he's like, well, Yanky, before you tell me, I started giving some type of intro. I'm meeting with someone. I'm trying. He's like, hey, wait, before you tell me what happened to your speech? So again, because I had a major stutter, after 10 seconds, he could right away tell, especially with him, Choshev Yid, that something happened. So I was like, yeah, that's what I want to tell Rabbi about. Now he tells this story over because he knows how much I used to stutter. It happens to be 3 years later when I went back to the Mir. Now, Baruch Hashem, I've flown out to Eretz Yisrael, flown out all over the place, but during the summers now I go to Eretz Yisrael, and I met with him, and he pulls out of his pocket my business card. Exactly, I carry around this business card with me. I tell people when they're in a difficult situation, they don't see any hope, and they feel like if there's anything, it would take so long to get out of it. They see this card, I tell them the story. 10 seconds, from one day to the next.
He actually saw it with his own eyes.
Then Shabbos went by, and I was still not sure what's going on, because when you're studying for so long, you're just this is here comes your association. This is me. This is the way I talk. I needed that clincher. I'd like to say, Yanky, you're not stuttering. That wake up. That clincher in my mind to make that impact. You don't have to stutter anymore. So that Shabbos, Hashem put me in the best situation, which a couple of days earlier would have been potentially a disaster. What happened, basically, make a long story short, is my friend brings me into a new shul near where I used to daven. I lived in Sanhedrin B'Chevet. I was davening in a shul in Ramat Eshkol. And there's a Rav over there, very high Rav. And I didn't know this, but he's very, very friendly. And even if you walk in the middle of his drasha, he'll introduce himself to you and ask you about yourself. I didn't know this. And I walk into the shul. I was schmoozing with my friend, and he was going to the Kiddush. So we walked in, and it's the middle of the drasha during the Kiddush. We're standing in the back, and he turns to my friend, his name is Aaron Posen. He says, Aaron, I see you brought a new friend over here. And he turns to me and says, what's your name? That is from the hardest things for me to say. It's the exact thing. Can't wiggle around. And I'm stuck there. 60 eyes on me, and I'm like, well, what should I do now? And I pretty much panicked inside, what should I do? I got to come up with some creative idea. What I probably would have done is pretend I didn't know he's looking at me. There was no one else in the back. And it was just us two. And he already said, and I would probably have waited for my friend to say my name, Then in my mind I was thinking, wait a second, I have this new way. Let me try it. So I said, Yanky Kaufman. He's like, oh, very nice. Where are you from? I was like, oh, wait a second. I don't know if this is going to work every time. And so I said, Sanhedrin B'Chevet. He's like, no, where are you originally from? I was like, what does this have to do with your drasha? To grind me on this. And I said, Muncie. I was like, oh, very nice. And he continued on with his drasha. That's the point when I wanted to make a l'chaim. This is middle of the Kiddush, right? This is unbelievable. I walked out of there and I told my friend, Aaron, do you have what just happened? I'm on a different, that's when it kicked in. I went home and I started to dissect what exactly happened. Can I do, and I discussed it with my wife, and we had that suit that went straight till Mencha, and it was during the summer. And I dissected, Can I do more to make it even better? Can I do less to make it even easier? And I started to see that a lot of the goals of the therapist that I went to were accomplished in this way, just much more straightforward, much more practical. And that's what it was always lacking in this field. Something practical, something clear. Motzei Shabbos, I took out a phone book and I wanted to share this with other people. Maybe I could help someone. Who knows? I still didn't know 100%. I started to call a lot of the famous people, a lot of the famous Rabbanim. I told them my 30-second elevator pitch. If you know anyone who stutters, send them over. It's for free. Started to help people, 15, 20 people.
So you understood what the issue was and how to fix it.
Yeah, but I didn't get too excited yet. Who knows? Just because it worked for me, so what?
But you understood that there was a way.
Yes, this definitely.
Okay.
So I started to see other people, and then I realized like these people, most of them had the same journey as me. Most of the people who were older and had a moderate to heavy stutter, they also went to this one and that one. I started to see like, hey, wow, I thought like I was the only one that wasn't successful in therapy because like people made up like they're so amazing and things like that. And maybe people who were more popular, they weren't necessarily popular for success. I realized they're popular because they're doing it for a long time. Maybe they have a special degree, a doctorate, or whatever it is, or they wrote books, but that doesn't mean success. That means they are popular in this field. And I thought popular equals success. And I was like, these people had the same journey as me. And like, why didn't it work? And it was for the same reasons. It wasn't practical. It wasn't clear. So I want to speak about what should a program look like that should make sense, that it should help other people. It's not just about a technique. It's about a system. What should a system look like that should help other people who stutter? That there should be real potential that this can help other people.
So I'm a bit confused. I heard your whole journey, exactly how it went through, but I don't necessarily understand what happened at that time and that moment. Like, what epiphany did you have?
Different techniques started to percolate in my mind, and I started to do them. And didn't have it so clear, but I started to see that this was working.
And what was that?
As people ask me all the time, like, what do you do? They don't realize, maybe people are coming from what they're used to therapies, like just do one thing. I'll say sometimes people like free therapy, so I could tell you what other people do, and this is thousands of dollars of value of what from the biggest specialists do. Pretty much they're all doing the same stuff. And that is, take a deep breath before you speak. Say it softly. Say 3 words and then take a break. Say 1 word, take a break. Speak in syllables. Think before you speak. Don't think before you speak. Of course, relax is the best one. And it's just basically one thing. There's not much to it. Or stretching certain sounds. This is pretty much, that I say, easy onset, saying it softly. This is pretty much what everyone's doing. And unfortunately, that is not working for most people, because what people need is not just a good technique and a practical way. And what started to percolate in my mind was a practical way. But I realized from all the therapy that I've been to is that people need a system of how to get this into real life. So I want to talk about that. What does it mean? What are the needs of people who stutter? And what should a system look like? Before we get into specifics, what should a system look like to help people who stutter? So number 1, you need a practical way. For somebody who's stuttering for so long, for them to incorporate a new way, it's got to be practical. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult to do, because this is so much a part of them. There's so much habits that's reinforced, and the emotions behind that, and all their fears, and all their ways of talking, like we spoke about it before, that's all coming in, and it's compounded, and it's very much a part of them. So now I can tell them, now have another thing on your mind that a lot of times it takes concentration. Every syllable, take a break. All this is a whole new way of talking.
A deep breath is very practical. I don't know if it works, but it's practical.
Okay, so let's dissect this one. Taking a deep breath, nobody talks like that. Nobody talks like that. It's a whole new way of talking. People take a breath if they need oxygen. Nobody takes a deep breath to talk, which means if I'm going to have to take a breath before I talk. That means it's going to be constant, right? Because I can stutter at any word. So what does that mean, take a breath? I mean, it's not like I was breathing before. So how much is this going to work? Number one, how effective is it really going to be? So that if the goal is that I should be more relaxed.
You think it through for a second and then you speak.
Right, but let's say my name. I know my name. And I still stutter on
basically, don't answer the first second. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Think it through and say what you have to say.
So let's say, for example, my name. Right? My name is the hardest thing for me to say. You're telling me that if I would like write it down and really know it, then I wouldn't stutter. People do stutter on their name. And that's from the hardest things. And they know their name. And that's the times when they stutter the most. Let's see, reading. People should never stutter when they read. As let's see something that they know. But people do stutter on that. So take a deep breath constantly. What's called a deep breath? 2 seconds, 3 seconds. So if you're trying to come to take a real deep breath, well, I'm not going to be comfortable doing that. So if I'm going to have to say Yanky Kaufman.
No, it's different. What's your name? Yanky Kaufman.
That's not a good enough breath.
It's just for the focus part.
So again, does focusing before you speak make you not stutter?
I have no idea. I've never stuttered.
So that's the premise. But so that's going to be.
Baruch Hashem.
So Lamaisa, whatever, all these different types of methods, it's very difficult to make them work for real life. Now, we'll go into this a little more. Sometimes for outsiders or to therapists, they may feel, this is practical. I'll tell you an even easier one. Because taking a deep breath all the time, this is how it would sound. Let's say you say, Shalom Aleichem, what's your name?
Shalom Aleichem, what's your name?
Yanky Kaufman.
Where are you from?
Now I'm confused. I want to say something else, and you already asked me a different question where I'm from. So let me just try to catch myself. I'm just telling you what's on my mind. Okay, and I'm supposed to be relaxed to be able to take a deep breath. And I don't want to do like an anxious breath because that will look really...
Looks weird. It's awkward. It
looks weird, and I have to do it all the time. And I have to basically make a whole Hashem Yichud before I talk. It's a whole new way of talking. Take a deep breath and then talk. It sounds simple, and that's part of the problem. Because you tell someone, just take a deep breath. I mean, come on, don't you want to not stutter? Just take a deep breath. And sometimes you may pull in scientific proof behind that. If you take a deep breath, the vocal folds are just gonna pop open. Stuttering, you have like your lumdus, like stuttering, the vocal fold, they lock, and just take a breath and it just pops out. But who says how much I need to take a deep breath for my vocal folds to open up? That's not scientific. Maybe if I'm in a very stressed situation, taking a deep breath is not going to be enough. It's not scientific how much of a deep breath you need for how anxious you are and how much your vocal folds lack. It could be scientific that if you would take a deep breath, it can open your vocal folds. We don't know how much. So many times it'll maybe take a deep breath like this. My name is Yanky. It's a locking. What makes it not lock? Because I'm trying to take a deep breath. Maybe on the breath out, it could open up, but will it be enough?
So let's say without a deep breath, just focus.
Oh, so some people say it's just a matter of time.
Maybe it could help you at least 50%.
When I want to say something, I want to say it. So what do you want me to do? Just stop? Some therapists say this, by the way. You're on track.
Mm-hmm.
But what am I waiting for? So sometimes it could help me, but sometimes it won't, because what's going to make me not stutter? You think stuttering is just a matter of a second and then eventually I get it out? What about with a heavy stutter? It could take me 5 seconds. So what am I waiting for? What am I doing?
Think it through beforehand.
So thinking before, this is also what therapists say.
That's why you practice the drasha,
Right. And a lot of times you practice. By the way, sometimes the more you prepare, the more you stutter. I remember I knew I wanted to ask one of the Gedolim a question. And of course, they're the nicest people, but I was... because I had a lot of cover for them, they're perceived to be more intimidating, at least for me. So I knew that I would probably stutter more. So I prepared the question, every comma, every period, every word, prepared a few times, and I felt very empowered by myself. Like, oh, now I really know what I'm going to say. Now I'm not going to stutter. Well, I guess if it worked, not even one word.
Wow.
Stuttered away. Wow. So is a lot of these things that you're saying, there's something to it, but it's not enough. And it doesn't hard, and it's weird. All these things, when I'm practicing in the office, on a comfortable chair, after a few months, it'll be great. Unfortunately, therapists look at that. Well, I did my job. but
There's not a real
doing your
answer
job
to it.
has to be a plan that it's going to help them for real life. So that's part one. Part one is you have to have a practical skill. It has to be clear, and that's part one. Part two is how are they going to integrate it into their daily life? There's a lot of barriers. We have to be aware of the barriers. They have their habits. They have their fears. They have their associations. Just this is the way I talk. This is what's going to happen because I stutter. I'm so used to it. And all this has to be addressed. And that is a lot has to do with, that's very individualized. And a lot has to do with, it takes a lot of creativity and patience to understand what's easier for them, what's harder for them. And a lot has to do with how capable are they? How much are they able to do it? And you have to work with them on their level. So this is part of the integration process, which is something that needs to be very methodical to work with people. And of course, when you have experience with it and you did it yourself, you know how to guide people much better. The number three that a system of success should incorporate is maintenance. People could do well and they'll feel great, but things can come up in their life, the environment, what's on their mind, how they feel, that could bring back the stuttering.
Oh.
It's not like
you
have like a switch, the no stuttering switch, you turn it on, you fix something in the brain, then they don't stutter anymore. They have their habits, they have their fears, there's associations, they can fall back. And if you just do follow-ups, you'll see that that can happen.
Wow.
Unfortunately, people don't do follow-ups, and therefore they don't even know how well or lack thereof their clients are doing. And therefore, if you're really following up with people, you know that this is critical. I remember I had someone call me up once, like I'm not going to say details, but try to keep it vague. I'm like you, whatever. It's an interesting phone call, but he tells me, yeah, I'm like you. I'm very successful. So I said, before I got into any technique and this, do you do follow-ups with your clients? And he laughed at me well, no, it's not my job. No, I teach them a great way. So before you prove to me that you're successful, how do you know you're successful? If you don't do follow-ups, then you don't know.
You don't
because
collect
that's what
the data.
counts. That's maybe you'll feel I did my part, but you didn't really do your part for the client because you have to help them in a way that's going to help them for real life. And part of real life is understanding that there's barriers and helping them this can become a part of them. Because that's really the only way that somebody's going to be successful long term is if this becomes a part of them. So what's unique about our program? So first of all, when people say, they're a stuttering specialist, what did they do that's special? Just the techniques that everyone else does? I don't hear that owns up to a specialty. The way I see it, a person who specializes in stuttering, or anyone who's treating people who stutter, you have to have a system. And that system, the way I see it, the only way that I know of that really works, is a system that's practical, that's clear, that's methodical to help them integrate it into their daily life, and has a maintenance system. Without that, how can we be confident that this can work for a person? So you could find that out as a person. Nobody's going to tell you exactly what they do.
So what you're saying is that, yes, there are people that get helped individually by different types of methods, but there's not a single place where everyone gets helped by a specific method.
There's research that shows that most people go for therapy. Even the ones that are successful, there's a relapse.
Mm.
So, if you just do follow-ups, you'll see how important it is.
So why can't they continue with whatever method you're doing just on their own?
Because people are human and they need guidance and things come up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a new habit, it's a new skill. So most people who are challenged in a certain area, they'll need that follow-up. Now, I'm not saying everyone, I didn't, but I'm also very, very ambitious, very driven, very focused. So for me, I was able to pull it through with Siyata Shmaya. But most people are going to need this.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody's going to tell you exactly what they do, before you come to them. But at least find out what's your system, what's the plan. Not, I don't know, I'm doing my ishtadlus, I stutter, or my child stutters, and like tzad hashava, this person stuttering specialist, stuttering whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. There's no tzad hashava. You need a plan. What is the system? How are you going to get someone to be successful for real life.
So
Very few people do this.
I'll tell you what I had, my experience with stuttering, that I had an issue by davening Shemona Esrei. What I figured out is that every second or third word is like a period. So once I did that, plus I did a different way how to say it. It wasn't like Burich Atu Hashem, it was like Burich Atu Hashem with an undertone. Then it actually works. So it's interesting.
A lot of times people will have these kinds of things, and they have their way that works for them, which is gewaldig. Listen, many things that Baruch Hashem, you figured out a way. But for most people who have a stuttering for a few years,
it's a package.
It's not so important, where it came from at that point.
Right.
People think like we go to the root, and like, doesn't that make sense? You go to the root, you'll fix the problem, right? Well, let's see if that applies for stuttering, at least for most people. See, it could be if something triggered the stuttering and it's in the initial stages, you may be able to get to the source, so to speak. Again, it could still be tricky, but let's say there's something obvious that happened. A lot of times people say, we have no idea. But let's say it's something obvious. They got into a car crash, let's say, right? So it could be that if you address the situation that prompted their stuttering, that the stuttering will go away. We'll call it easy come, easy go. But once a person's stuttering for a while, then it has a whole different situation, like we described before. It gets involved in a person's habits.
It's already embedded.
Everything gets pulled into it. So the mashal the professionals give is, let's say you have a fire, okay? And you light with the original match, you light it to the forest. And you say, whoa, there's a fire. We got to get to the source. It doesn't sound good, right? There must have been a source. Okay, so let's put out the original match. And then fire will go away, right? Everyone knows that's not the way it works. Because why? Fire has a mind of its own. It spreads. Stuttering is the same thing. It could be if you extinguish the original match right away, you'll take care of it. It could be if you take care of the issue right away, a few weeks, few months, something like that, then maybe the stuttering will get better. But once a person's stuttering for 6 months, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, now you're usually dealing with the bigger challenge of their stuttering. And usually people don't really care why they started stuttering. They're not going for therapy for that. They're going to therapy because usually stuttering takes over anything else.
Anxiety and all these things that we spoke about.
Or just they want to speak better. It's not necessarily they feel anxiety, just they want to speak better.
Right.
Just as simple as that.
I have a different question. Is there anything in history written about stuttering?
Yeah.
Any sources?
Interesting question. So some say that Moshe Rabbeinu is the first person we have on record that used to stutter. It's machlekes, but Rashi seems to say that Moshe Rabbeinu had a stutter.
And I also say, yes.
I'll tell you a quick moral on why Moshe. There's many different mafarshim why Moshe Rabbeinu had a stutter. I'll tell you an interesting moral. Moral says that most people, that a person is made of physical aspects, the body, and spiritual, the neshama. The speech is a blend of both. And therefore, since most people are balanced in their physical and spiritual makeup, they have fluent speech. Moshe Rabbeinu was imbalanced. He was much more spiritual than physical.
Interesting.
And therefore, that manifested itself in his speech.
Wasn't it by the fire that he put into his mouth?
I'm not going to go into the whole shikli of all the mechanics of stuttering, but it could be that it was both things that brought it out together. Meaning, just say in short, there was that potential, things were sensitive, and that was what triggered, that was what brought it out.
Moshe Rabbeinu had the option, gold or coils, I think.
Yeah.
And he chose the coil. And not he chose the gold, but...
Gabriel pushed his hand over. So but also you have to explain why would that bring out a stutter. But this is the basic idea that the morale...
Oh, so it has zero to do with the stutter?
The Vilna Gaon says, again, it's Rashi doesn't say that that's where it came from. The Medrash says it came from. We're going to the whole Sheklali in this, but it's just interesting for people to know this morale that sometimes, people will look at a person who stutters that they're like deficient. Sometimes they actually have a maila, something that is special about them, and that's why they're stuttering, and it's manifesting itself in their imbalanced speech.
And how is that? By
Moshe Rabbeinu.
Oh, he was more spiritual. Oh, interesting. Okay. So that's the only... that's the first place where we see
Amos, the Medrash says, has a stutter. And since then, there's been a lot of people who stutter.
Yeah, but...
A lot more people stutter in the firm world than people think. Because again, we're not taking into account the people that cover it up, that have slight stuttering. A lot of times we cross them off, oh, there's just a little shy. But it's very high in the firm world.
Very high.
Very high. Pretty much anyone who I talk to says, oh yeah, I know someone stutters. Stuttering is not so much on people's minds. So we don't really have this association, oh, that's a stutter. We only associate it with the moderate stuttering or the heavy stuttering. The slight stuttering, we're like, yeah, a little mumble, a little unclear, a little unsure, or something like that. But if a lot of these people are coming with a very slight stutter.
I didn't see it being like such a big problem.
Probably somewhere between 2 to 3%. And in younger kids, it's even more common.
Why?
Because there's more going on with the speech. They're still developing their speech. So a lot of times they'll outgrow it.
Children is more common to...
At least at some stage in their life.
Mm.
Yeah, but everyone knows someone who stutters, and it should get more attention. And most people don't know too much about it. So this is the idea that the more we talk about it, people will understand it better.
Is there any records, any documents, let's say from 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, of people that tried to take care of this issue?
Stuttering has been around probably since people started talking. But if you look at the research, there's very weak research in this field. I've read the latest books on stuttering. Most of the books, I would say, are anecdotal stories of people who just didn't let it get involved in their life, at least as far as they're concerned. Don't let it get in their way. Didn't let it get in their way. But this never spoke to me because, okay, I'm happy for you. You know, they had their circumstances that helped them pull through. A lot of these people gave up on therapy or gave up on hope that they'll ever get better. So when you come up to a brick wall, you say, okay, so then I'll try to make the best of it. But I wasn't like that because although I did try to make the best of it, but I still had hope that I could get better. And a lot of these people had certain talents or certain family backgrounds that helped them to be successful. And somehow these people, you know, become sensations. Whoa, look at this guy. He's amazing. And unfortunately, this gets a lot of attention. Not unfortunately, but unfortunately, it's people think that most people who stutter are like that. And I don't believe that that's true. I think most people who stutter are suffering to whatever extent. And I believe that, and I know that a lot of these people who people look up to saying like, oh, that person is so successful and he stutters, so it probably doesn't bother him. But inside it does bother them. And for whatever reason, maybe they can talk about it and encourage other people, but it still hurts. So most people are not like that, you know. So maybe these people are very wealthy or very good at a certain sport or whatever it is. But it's most people who stutter feel that they have a challenge, and it never spoke to me like, okay, so good for him that he made it, but I'm not like that. I'm not the best at golf, or I'm not the multi-billionaire, or whatever it is. So I'm still looking for a way for myself.
So, but my question was, where do you know of any documentation that was done, research that was done before 100 years ago?
They have research of what people tried. I mean, they used to think that stuttering has to do with tongues, and sometimes they would cut off people's tongues.
Cut off people's tongues?
I mean, not much changed since then because people still do surgery on people's tongues. Maybe it's done in a safer way. But they say, hey, again, it could be, who knows? Maybe it's a weak tongue or something like that. So they'll try it. I've heard many of these stories. But the point is that, like we said before, that there's nothing practical in the field. So they have a lot of different ways that maybe this will work, maybe that will work. But the bottom line is that they're not practical. Either because, usually in conjunction, that it's hard to do, it's not so clear, and it's not even fully effective. So why should I do it? That's just out the technique itself, besides for integrating it and maintaining it.
So what have you done the past few years that changed the landscape of stuttering? Like, what's Yanky Kaufman's achievements in this field?
Yeah, so I think it's very unique, just my background of having a heavy stutter till I was 26. That itself is unique. Heavy stutter till 26. And then the fact that I completely overcame my stuttering. I don't know anyone who's like that, number one, especially somebody who went for around 15 years of therapy. I don't know anyone just like that. Number two, is that, like I said before, the system, what we have is number one, practical skills. Number two, we help people integrate it into their daily life. And it takes a lot of creativity, a lot of patience, a lot of understanding people's capabilities, and also this follow-up system. We have a very unique follow-up system that we have graduates of the program. People who used to stutter, they do follow-ups with the newer people. So we have all different types, Baruch Hashem, because we've helped so many people. We can match people up who's most suitable for each other. So we have even the Hasidim with the Hasidim and the Litvish with the Litvish, because they understand each other better. The men with the men, the women with the women, old, young, all different types, and we have these people all over the world. So we were able to match people up with people who's most suitable for each other. All my coaches, we call them speech coaches, are people who used to stutter, have stuttered into their adult life, and I believe all of them have been for therapy in the past. So these are not like the easy ones. Oh, they went for therapy, they thought they're supposed to get better, so they paid money, so they were positive, and they got better. These were people who were not successful with the traditional, whatever you want to call it, traditional, non-traditional. I don't know what's called traditional exactly. There's not one way that people do, but what we call the regular way, and it didn't work. And they're coming here now. They're the most passionate to help others. These are the people who understand it in an unparalleled way. And these people are role models like no one else can be, because they are people who actually been there, done that. That's one aspect. There's a lot of other perks. I'll mention a few of them. One is that we have these skills groups. That means most people are able to do it on their own. They get better and better and integrate it more till they integrate in all different situations, easier to the harder. But some people still have a hard time with that. And we're always looking to accommodate and see how can we fill the needs of people. That's my guiding light. How can we make it better and easier and more effective? So one of the things that we came up with was to bring people together, and they'll use their skills in a group where it was in the past hardest for them. We'll call it their nevers, speaking in public, davening for the Amud, introducing themselves to new people, saying all the hardest words. And in short, we gather these people together, anywhere between 10 to 20 people, and they have an opportunity to make this major breakthrough. And they feel amazing about it. And then when they go back home and they're in that situation, it was enough real with new people and in shul and speaking in public, getting the aliyah.
You do a shul session?
I rent a shul, just for us, it's exclusive. I have a lot of rabbanim come, had a lot of psychologists come. People are perceived to be more intimidating, and I had police officers. I mean, you name it. Anyone who I could bring in that will give people more confidence. They came and accomplished, and they saw that they could do it. And therefore, when they go back home, they know that they could do it. And it was hard for them. It was a police officer. It was whatever it was. It was the real thing, and they know that they could do it. That's another aspect. And recently, we had a big breakthrough. It was always very short. It was 5 to 7 sessions. I trained on a lot of therapists working under me just because I got very, very busy. When I just started this within a very short time, I had a 6-month waiting list. So I started to train in other therapists who I hand-selected, who have the qualities of what it takes to be successful, to give over the skills, etc. And it took a little longer with them because they didn't necessarily start it themselves. And Baruch Hashem, now we're over 1,000 success stories later that we came up to a new plateau in our program. And that is that the last 22 people who came to me, I was able to help them in one session. I didn't think I could do it. It was always very short. It was usually 5 to 7 sessions when people came to me. And the last 22 people who came to me was able to do it in one session. One session. And I knew that people would be skeptical, how can that be? So I took a detailed survey of all these people, and I had them fill out a form, very detailed, when they started, how old they are, what therapy they tried in the past, how did they feel about that, what was the level of studying before they came, and mainly how they feel about it now. And just to say some of the list of what they themselves filled out, I didn't touch any of them. And again, this is with their signed signatures, I have these physical forms, that they feel this method is practical. Number 2, that it could help them in real life. I had them practice. Every single one of them, if their parents came, if their parents brought them over, I would have the parents come and try to get your child to stutter. I had them make phone calls of situations that could have been hard for them. They saw that this could really work. I never had that. It was always just with a therapist. I had them practice in real life that they could feel that this is something for real life? Number 3, do you feel you have the tools for long-term success? 22 out of 22 filled out. The answer is yes, unequivocally. Not sure. We had not sure. I'm not going to go through all the details, but the answer was a real success for these people in one session. Now, that doesn't mean they'll never stutter again. They get another few months of follow-up just to ensure that this is going to become a part of them. So this is what's happening for the last 22 people. And for right now, we're at a breaking point in history where there's a concept called a success rate. Success rate that's provable. Of course, anybody could say what they want, but a provable success rate. And I'm working with a researcher now to make this very legitimate, that he can be involved and let people know that there's a real way. Not it depends and who knows, but there's a real way for people who are serious that they can get better very quickly and in a very effective way. Now, some people may say, oh, so it's magic, you just come. Of course there's no magic. And stuttering is not like a flick of a switch and you stop stuttering. I only see people who are very serious. And another unique aspect of my program is I only see people who are sure that they are ready to commit. Most people, if they say, I'm not sure if my child's ready, they'll say, okay, well, come, we'll try. I'm not like that. If you're not sure, I don't really believe you'll have a good chance of this making a major impact in your life. And that's what we're looking for major impact, major success.
So these 22 people are your case study?
I have a lot of other case studies before this, over almost 200, but it's not as detailed with starting dates and end dates and, all these details to fill out. So this last 22 is my latest case study of 22 out of 22. It's going to get more and more.
What have you done that you narrowed it down from 5-6 sessions to one session?
Again, the skill, I'm always developing it, and every person is a whole parsha. We could try to get into things and we do a lot of follow-up, see what works and make it better and better. But let's say the number one thing that we did was tell people before, you must take it seriously. Because I found that the people who took it seriously, without exception, being consistent, following, doing it all the way, it's very doable. There's really no good excuse not to be successful. It's just some people think that if they do it halfway or most, then that's good enough. It's like traveling from Bar to Lakewood and only going 80%. It's very doable. You got to go in a car, but you can't go 80%.
So 5-6 times was the motivation to get going.
So it would be a process. Get better and better, work with them. But now I told them, you must take it seriously. Well, it was a busy time. The reason why I never thought I could do it myself in one session, but it was a busy time and a lot of people wanted to come. This goes right before Pesach, and a lot of people wanted to come. So I said, listen, I'll squeeze you in, but you got to take it very seriously. The first person who came, I thought I would be able to do it fast. I didn't think in one, but his mother was late to pick him up, and I said, he's here anyway. We'll keep going. And it was a Hasidic guy, a 15-year-old boy. And just while I was here, I told the mother, she could continue going shopping. He's doing well. And it was a few hours. And the mother came back and said, now try to get him to stutter. His father called him. He called his father on the phone. I said, call someone who you usually stutter with. And it's the same thing. After 10 seconds, the father's like, whoa, what is going on?
So this was how many hours?
The first person was 3.5 hours. We had some breaks in the middle. Again, I wasn't planning on doing it in one session, but I saw that he's very capable and he's ready to follow. The main thing is that he's ready to follow exactly what I say. And it's very doable. But he took the achrayus to do it. That's the main thing that changed. Telling people, you have to follow it all the way. And the next person, I didn't think I would be able to do it so, just because I did it in one person, I didn't know if everyone else could do it in one session. But the next person, I did it even faster than that. It was actually 1 hour. I have this on video, before and after. This person's mother is a speech therapist and a mental health professional.
Wow.
And I'm going to make a video of this, and I could say her name, we're going to put it out there. She lets me quote her, and she witnessed it in 1 hour. Now, the average person takes 2.5 hours, right? The way it is right now, at least for the last 22 people. So for the first time in history, there's a success rate, 22, a significant amount, with a professional, an outsider involved. And this is really, people should know that if they're serious, then there's a way for them to have quick results and lasting results. Baruch Hashem, I'm so far following up with all these people, and they're doing very, very well.
Can you record the session, or it needs to be one-on-one?
Oh, I only do one-on-one. I don't do anything halfway. I don't do Zoom.
Why?
Because it's more effective in person. And you need to really see everything about the person, understand them. They need to be comfortable with you. Okay, people are already very comfortable with me because they know I used to stutter. So they know I'm speaking very tzimzach. But I need to see them, and half it is them talking. I need to see exactly what's going on.
So it needs to be an in-person session.
In person. I know people who out of town, so especially now it's only one day to come in. It's much more convenient. But in the past, when I used to do 5 to 7 sessions, I've been flown out all over the world. You know, I've been flown out to London 3 times, Manchester twice, Israel twice.
Do you do Israel sessions?
So right now, last 2 years, and this year, Mitzvah I'll be coming to Israel, and I see people. And before I would come for much longer to help a lot of people. I don't do it in groups. I do it one-on-one, but for a group of people. But now, it's much more convenient. They don't have to wait till I come for a group of people. They could just come in for one day, Siyat Shema. The rest could be done on the phone. But first, they have to feel that they have a solid way. They feel that I don't have to stutter anymore.
Wow. So someone that wants to stop stuttering from Israel should fly in, have a single session, go back, and then have the follow-ups through the phone.
And I have follow-up people in Israel. All different types that people can follow up.
So how big of a network do you have now?
Right now, we have 25 specialists. A lot of these people are people who used to stutter. A lot of them are speech therapists, people who are very well known in the field. I picked people who are already very successful. And that says a lot also, that these people who try to treat stuttering, and these are people who are trained in other therapists, when they saw what I did, they saw that this is the real way. One of my therapists said, before I was trying to do stuttering, I took a lot of courses, I read a lot of books, because stuttering is very interesting to people. So he really wanted to help people, knowing the impact that it can make on a person's life, but he felt, I don't have a way. And he kept searching and doing different courses, but he said, I don't really have a solid way. So someone who comes to me, I can try, but he said the difference between before Kaufman and after Kaufman is that now I'm not trying to do stuttering. Now I'm doing stuttering. Now I'm excited to see people who stutter. When they walk in, I'm not apprehensive, what's going to be, I hope I'm able to help him. Now I feel, okay, you take this seriously, we can really help you.
Well, thank you, Yanky, so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to come down here and obviously make this beautiful episode for the Latest Talks Plus members that support the podcast with $9.99 a month. Before we finish, turn around to that camera and say a 60-second message to Klal Yisrael.
Okay. So, Benegea speech, stuttering is something very unique, very challenging. And for people who are serious, there's a real way now to help a person to get real results in a short amount of time, in a way that has lasting results. And Baruch Hashem, we've developed this to over 1,000 people, that it has worked for people. And now we have real research proving that this can really help for people. Again, you have to take it seriously, but there's a solid way that has a system of teaching people how to speak with fluency, integrating it into daily life, and maintaining it so that they can ensure long-term results.
And where can they contact you?
Contact me at 732-513-2330. That's the best way. You could call the office at 833-2-FLUENCY, the number 2, fluency. Or email smoothspeechsolution@gmail.com. That's smoothspeechsolution@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I hope the people stuttering will be helped by this episode. Thank you so much.